Imagine standing on a wooden longship in the middle of a gray, freezing North Atlantic storm. The waves are not just high. They are moving with a rhythmic, muscular power that suggests something is breathing beneath the hull. Suddenly, the ocean for miles around you begins to rise. A mountain of barnacled, obsidian scales breaks the surface, followed by a head the size of a fortress. As the beast exhales, the air turns to acidic green fog. This isn't just a sea monster. This is the boundary of the world. Welcome back to the Mythos Atlas. We have faced the skinless terrors of Scotland and the winged predators of the American skies. But today, we are expanding our map to the very limits of the cosmos. We are traveling to the icy, iron-bound realms of Old Norse mythology. Today, we aren't just hunting a cryptid. We are tracking an existential threat to the universe itself. We are facing the Midgard Serpent, the child of chaos, the great Encircler. We are facing Jörmungandr. To understand Jörmungandr, you must first understand the Norse view of the universe. To the Vikings, the world was not a safe, infinite expanse. It was a fragile disk called Midgard, surrounded by a vast, terrifying peripheral ocean. Beyond that ocean lay Utgard, the outer world of giants and primordial chaos. Midgard was a besieged island of humanity, and the only thing keeping the chaotic waters of the outside from crashing in was a single, colossal entity coiled in the depths. Jörmungandr is the second child of the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angerboa. He is the brother of Fenrir the great wolf and Hel, the queen of the dead. When the Aesir gods in Asgard received a prophecy that the children of Loki would one day bring about the end of the world, Odin, the All-Father, took action. He looked at the infant serpent, which was already growing at an unnatural, terrifying rate, and he cast it into the deep, dark ocean that surrounds Midgard. Odin hoped the ocean would drown the monster. He was wrong. The serpent didn't die. It thrived. In the crushing pressure and the absolute cold of the deep sea, Jörmungandr grew and grew until he became so large that he could no longer move through the water. He became the water. He stretched until his body encircled the entire world of men, eventually reaching his own tail. By biting down on his own tail, he locked the world together. This is the Ouroboros of the North, a living boundary. But this lock is a fragile one. The Norse poets tell us that the day Jörmungandr lets go of his tail, the foundations of the world will shatter, and the final war, Ragnarök, will begin. The physical description of Jörmungandr in the sagas is a masterclass in primordial horror. He is not a sleek, graceful snake. He is an ancient, bloated leviathan. His scales are described as being like iron plates, crusted with centuries of deep-sea salt, barnacles, and frozen sediment. His eyes are like twin suns burning with a sickly, pale yellow light beneath leagues of black water. But his most terrifying attribute is his venom. Jörmungandr is not a constrictor. He is a viper on a cosmic scale. His blood is a black, boiling poison, and his breath is a corrosive mist that can dissolve the very shields of the gods. The history of the Midgard Serpent is defined by a singular, bitter rivalry with the god of thunder, Thor. If Jörmungandr is the ultimate force of chaotic nature, Thor is the protector of order. Their fates are woven together in a violent tapestry that spans the beginning of time to its very end. The most famous encounter between the two is the legendary fishing trip. Imagine Thor, disguised as a young man, joining the giant Hymir on a boat. Thor, driven by a reckless, divine ego, insisted on rowing further out into the deep ocean than any man or giant had ever dared, into the unfathomable waters. For bait, Thor used the severed head of a massive black ox. Deep in the lightless trenches, Jörmungandr felt the vibration. The great Encircler, who had not fed in centuries, opened his massive jaws and swallowed the ox head. Thor felt the tug. With his divine strength, he pulled so hard that his feet crashed through the bottom of the boat, anchoring him to the seabed itself. As the water churned and boiled with black froth, the head of Jörmungandr broke the surface. The sagas describe this moment with chilling intensity. Thor, eyes flashing with lightning, staring down into the serpent's eyes, which were dripping with venom and hatred. Thor raised his hammer, Mjolnir, ready to strike the blow that would kill the beast. But the giant Hymir, paralyzed by a primal existential terror at the sight of the world-breaker, drew his knife and cut the fishing line. The serpent sank back into the depths, escaping into the darkness. Thor was furious, but the prophecy remained intact. The serpent and the god would meet one last time. But what does Jörmungandr represent in the human psyche? Why did the Norse people need a world-encircling monster to define their reality? From a historical perspective, the Midgard Serpent is the personification of the North Atlantic itself. For the Vikings, the sea was both their greatest highway and their most certain grave. The ocean was unpredictable, violent, and seemingly bottomless. Jörmungandr is the visual manifestation of the horizon, the line where the world ends and the terrifying unknown begins. He is the embodiment of the fear that if you sail too far, you will find not just a physical end, but a living one. Furthermore, Jörmungandr represents stasis. By biting his tail, he holds the world together, but he also prevents it from changing. He is the weight of the past, the ancient grudge that never heals. His existence is a paradox. He protects Midgard from the outer chaos by surrounding it, but he is also the very thing that will eventually destroy it. As we look at the modern world, the myth of the Midgard Serpent still resonates. We see him in the maps of the Middle Ages, labeled Hic sunt dragons, here be dragons. We see him in the modern scientific fear of the deep, the fact that we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the abyssal zones of our own planet. Jörmungandr is the archetype of the monster that is too big to see. We live our lives on the disk of normalcy, never realizing that just beneath the waves, something massive is holding the circle together. But the story doesn't end in the depths. Ragnarök is coming. The sagas tell us that when the great winter arrives, Jörmungandr will grow restless. The poison in his belly will boil. He will let go of his tail, and as he thrashes toward the land, the oceans will flood the world. He will crawl onto the earth, breathing his venom into the sky, turning the very air of Midgard into a toxic graveyard. Thor will meet him on the final battlefield. The god of thunder will strike the serpent with such force that the monster's skull will shatter, ending the threat of Jörmungandr forever.
Но за эту победу придется заплатить.
Thor will take only 9 steps away from the serpent's carcass before the clouds of poison exhaled by the dying beast overcome him. The protector of humanity will fall dead, consumed by the venom of the enemy he spent his life hunting. The Midgard Serpent is a reminder that in the Norse world, even the gods have a limit. There are forces in the universe so large, so ancient, and so toxic that they cannot be truly defeated, only survived for a time. Thank you for exploring the edge of the world with Mythos Atlas. We have faced the world encircler, but our map is still expanding. If you felt the cold spray of the Viking seas, leave a comment and let us know which ancient titan we should track next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated on our journey through the shadows of history. Next time, we are leaving the iron-cold north and traveling to the blistering sands of the Egyptian desert to face the Lord of Chaos and the Eater of the Sun. Get ready to face the serpent of the underworld, Apophis. Until then, keep your feet on solid ground, respect the deep, and remember, the horizon is never as empty as it seems. This has been Mythos Atlas. Stay safe out there. In that moment when the fishing line was cut and Jörmungandr slipped back into the abyssal darkness, the prophecy was not averted. It was merely delayed. The deep ocean remained a coiled tension, a state of suspended apocalypse. If Thor represents the active defense of order, Jörmungandr represents the slow, grinding, inevitable entropy that waits at the edge of all things. The Vikings didn't just fear the Midgard Serpent. They accepted him as a fundamental component of their reality. They understood that the circle of their known world was defined and held together by the very monster that would one day break it. This acceptance created a unique fatalism in Norse culture. If the world is encircled by a poison-breathing serpent whose awakening is inevitable, then security is an illusion. The only thing that matters is how one faces the final battle. Jörmungandr is the ultimate test of courage, not because he can be defeated, but because he must be faced even knowing the cost. From a psychological perspective, Jörmungandr embodies the primal fear of the abyss, the terrifying realization of how small and fragile our civilized disk truly is. He is the visual manifestation of the subconscious, the dark, powerful, non-rational forces that churn beneath the surface of our conscious minds. By biting his tail, he holds our psyche together, maintaining stasis. But if he lets go, the chaotic waters flood the mind, leading to madness or a violent, transformative Ragnarök of the self. Furthermore, the Ouroboros symbol itself, the serpent biting its own tail, is one of the most ancient and universal archetypes in human history. It represents eternity, the cyclical nature of time, and the unity of opposites. Beginning and end, life and death, destruction and creation. But in the Norse interpretation, this circle is not a peaceful mandorla. It is a tense, venomous lock. Jörmungandr doesn't just represent cycles. He represents the burden of cycles, the exhaustion of a world that is held together by its own poison. The physical reality of the ocean only fueled this myth. The North Atlantic, with its violent storms, unpredictable currents, and rogue waves, was a place where human logic and strength were meaningless. The Vikings were masterful sailors, but they respected the sea with a fear that bordered on worship. Every time a longship disappeared without a trace, it wasn't just a shipwreck. It was a sacrifice to the great Encircler. When the waves crashed against the stone hulls, it was the sound of Jörmungandr's scales shifting on the seabed. The myth also served a political function. By framing the world as a besieged island surrounded by primordial chaos, the Norse leaders could unite their people against common enemies. The external threat of Jörmungandr and the giants of Utgard made the internal laws and social order of Midgard essential for survival. It was a philosophy of us against the darkness. But as we look at the prophecy of Ragnarök, we see the true, terrifying scale of the threat. The text says that when Jörmungandr awakens, he will not just swim, he will crawl onto the land. This is the moment the ultimate boundary is crossed. The sea invades the earth. The biological monstrosity of the deep enters the realm of humanity. Thor's final battle with the serpent is a masterclass in tragic heroism. The god of thunder understands the prophecy. He knows that his victory will be his end. He does not fight for survival, he fights for legacy. He fights so that the memory of order will survive the flood of chaos. When he strikes the final blow, shattering the serpent's skull, he is not just killing a monster. He is fulfilling his purpose. But the 9 steps he takes before collapsing remind us that even the greatest strength has a limit. The poison of Jörmungandr is absolute. It is the final answer of chaos to the demands of order. The myth of Jörmungandr still rings true today. We see him in the modern maps of the seafloor, marked with the terrifying reality of the mid-Atlantic ridge and the abyssal zones. We see him in our scientific understanding of ecosystems, where a single broken link can lead to a cascading Ragnarök of extinction. We see him in our technology, in the global networks that encircle our world, powerful and interconnected, but vulnerable to a single point of failure. The Midgard Serpent is the archetype of the monster that is too big to defeat, but too important to ignore. We live our lives in the center of the disk, unaware that the very ground beneath our feet is anchored by a poison-breathing coil. He is a reminder that the horizon is never as empty as it seems, and that the ocean always keeps its secrets. Thank you for exploring the end of the world with Mythos Atlas. We have faced the world encircler, but our map is still expanding. If you felt the cold spray of the Viking seas and the heat of the serpent's poison, leave a comment and let us know which ancient titan we should track next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated on our journey through the shadows of history. Next time, we are leaving the iron-cold north and traveling to the blistering sands of the Egyptian desert. Get ready to face the Lord of Chaos, the enemy of the sun, and the serpent of the underworld, Apophis. Until then, keep your feet on solid ground, respect the deep, and remember, the horizon is never empty. This has been Mythos Atlas. Stay safe out there.